Byakuya Kuchiki is a beloved fan favorite character who has earned the right to be one of the most popular characters in the series. With his well-composed, prideful demeanor, he is someone that you cannot help but to want to see more of. Now, during the first Quincy invasion of the Soul Society, he had fought alongside Renji against the Sternritter As Nodt. This battle had resulted in his Bankai being stolen, and after having his own power used against him, it had felt like this was the last that we were going to see of the noble head of the Kuchiki clan. There was apparently a large outcry from fans regarding his supposed death, and it is speculated that Kubo had revived Byakuya in response to this backlash. By faking out on the death of such a pivotal character, it had affected the tension within the plot, and it had cheapened the supposed final request that Byakuya had made to Ichigo just as he had arrived within the Soul Society. If this is the case, then I'm disappointed that Kubo's story was swayed by the emotions of fans, and his writing was affected as a result of this. Imagine not being able to kill off characters just because of character popularity polls. Now this just means that any characters who are beloved and are fan favorites will never end up kicking the bucket. In this video, I want to explore what could have been different if Byakuya had in fact died during his battle against As Nodt, and how this would have affected the events of the story, and why I think that Byakuya actually should have died during the final arc of the Bleach manga. Before the video begins, only 20% of the people who actually watch my content are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy these videos, then subscribe and stick around for more content just like this. Now let's get back to the topic of the video. Byakuya's battle against As Nodt begins in chapter 495 and it concludes in chapter 502. Byakuya's attitude going into this fight is revealed within chapter 495, where he tells Renji not to show any pity to the enemy because the Quincy are behaving mercilessly, so the Shinigami need to behave in exactly the same manner. Byakuya reminds Renji that they are the cowards who had killed Sasakibe and had shed blood within the Serite without any warning. We see that he ends up landing the first strike as he penetrates through As Nodt's defenses by cutting his hand. The captain of the 6th division had already decided that he was going to use his Bankai at the onset of battle, as he admits that these Sternritters cannot be defeated without Bankai. Following Sasakibe's encounter, they had all assumed that the enemy can seal Bankai, but it was thanks to the sacrifice of Byakuya and the other captains that the Shinigami were able to learn an invaluable piece of information, which is that the enemy don't just seal Bankai, they steal it. After having activated his Bankai, it is immediately stolen by As Nodt, and Renji is about to use his own Bankai, but he is stopped by Byakuya. He instead tells him to watch their fight and to identify the opponent's ability. However, he is then overcome with fear thanks to As Nodt's power, as he sees a vision of a decomposing Rukia which seals Byakuya's fate, as he is then impaled by the Quincy. Then, after utterly succumbing to fear, which I never thought a character like Byakuya could do, he is then attacked by his own Bankai. In chapter 502, we see him fall to his knees, bloodied and battered, with As Nodt reminding him that there is nothing that he can do. He cannot hope to overcome his Bankai with his Shikai alone. When he gets back up to his feet, Byakuya is hit with a burst of Senbonzakura petals that rip through his body. After the first attack, he is about to fall to the ground, but he is then hit by another powerful burst of petals that pushes him into a wall, shredding through his body. The battle comes to an end with Byakuya's blood all over the wall and his ribcage being exposed, which highlights the fatality of the attack, and how, quite frankly, his fate should have been sealed here. Following this, there were several indications within the story that had led myself and other readers to believe that Byakuya was in fact going to die. Firstly, the most evident indication was when he had let go of his Zanbakudo and it is seen to shatter, which indicates that he is in fact not going to last much longer. It is explained that a Zanbakudo is linked to its owner. In chapter 143, we learn that if a Bankai disappears without the permission of its owner, it usually means that that individual will die soon. So following this train of thought, if a Zanbakudo breaks like the way that Byakuya's did, then it too would mean that he hasn't got long left. The second key indication that Byakuya was going to die was a line that was uttered by Hashwad immediately after Byakuya is defeated. In chapter 502, we see him relay to Yhwach that Byakuya Kuchiki is dead, with Yhwach saying that it had taken longer than expected, as he theorizes that the Sternritters are lacking in ruthlessness. Now when you read a line like this, it is so impactful impactful, and it baits you along towards a specific direction, and this is further emphasized in the scene where Byakuya offers a final request to Ichigo when he finally arrives onto the battlefield. In chapter 512, Byakuya is seen to speak to Ichigo in what appears to be his final moments. During this conversation, you really think about how far he has come as a character, someone who was introduced as being so prideful that he would allow the death of his sister instead of being seen to be breaking the customs of the Soul Society in order to protect her. This is a character who looked down upon Ichigo and had stated that his Bankai was a mockery to the history of the Shinigami. But now, during the 1000-Year Blood War arc, he is seen to be humbly asking for Ichigo's help. There was so much that Kubo had done right with this particular scene, and it would have made so much sense for this to be Byakuya's final moments. He tells Ichigo that as a captain of the Gotei 13, he had failed to defeat the enemy who had invaded the Serete. He goes on to talk about how he feels responsible for the deaths of several of his subordinates, and how because of this he has brought suffering upon their families. His pride is in tatters as he admits that he has lost miserably and he will die now. He is embarrassed to be asking Ichigo this, a human who should have nothing to do with the affairs of the Soul Society, so for this he asks for his forgiveness as he supposedly makes his last request here, as he begs him to save the Soul Society. This particular scene always leaves me jaw-dropped. The impact of it alone should help you to appreciate how the death of Byakuya would have driven the motives of characters like Ichigo, Renji and Rukia during the future of the story. With a key character like Byakuya dying, there would have been even more reason for us and the cast of Bleach to feel resentment towards the Quincy. Now, I'm not saying that Yamamoto's death wasn't enough for this, but it just would have been nice to see Kubo commit to something that he was hinting at and evidently was building up towards, as opposed to going back on his decision. There were plenty of indicators within the story that Byakuya wasn't going to survive. We were baited with one outcome, but we ended up getting an entirely different one, with Byakuya having survived the encounter and him being healed at the Royal Palace. Following the first invasion of the Quincy, the state of Byakuya is revealed within chapter 515, with a messenger Shinigami informing the captains during a captain's meeting that Byakuya and Renji have both survived, but it seems unlikely for them to regain consciousness as they are effectively comatose. In chapter 517, the Royal Guard arrive and Tenjiro Korinji is seen to take Byakuya to the Royal Palace in order to heal him, as he states that if he stays within the Soul Society then Byakuya will die. Chapter 545 cements the return of Byakuya's character as it is revealed that he has successfully been healed. Korinji informs Byakuya that he is the first person in history to have bathed within his hot springs for that long, but Byakuya tells him not to be concerned as he sets his sights on getting stronger so that he can fight the enemy. Now, there was backlash from fans on both sides regarding the fate of Byakuya, with some feeling annoyed that Kubo had faked out on his death. However, there was a subset of fans who were even more passionate and upset with Kubo after they had learnt that he had tried to kill off Byakuya's character. The fan backlash has been rumoured to be the reason why he didn't go through with Byakuya's death. I'm not entirely sure if Kubo was swayed by fan backlash, but it is said that he had death threats at the time from some really butthurt fans. I want to now talk about how Byakuya's death would have impacted the remainder of the 1000-Year Blood War arc if Kubo had in fact stuck with his guns. So we begin by examining the events immediately following his defeat. At this time within the story, the characters and readers had just seen the brutal injury sustained by Byakuya. With the reasons we have spoken about, we had every reason to believe that he was in fact dead. The reactions of the characters at this time give us hints of how things would have played out without Byakuya's presence in the narrative. When Renji had seen his captain being ripped to shreds by his own Bankai, all he could do was beg As Nodt to stop. When Ichigo had seen his mutilated body and had heard the prideful captain feel pitiful as he pleads with Ichigo to save the Soul Society, it was evident that this was a final request, the impact of which fuels Ichigo's rage towards the enemy, and this resultant anger had led him to directly confront the leader of the Quincy, Yhwach. If Byakuya did die, how would his death have impacted the remainder of the 1000-Year Blood War arc? There are several characters who would have been impacted by the death of Byakuya, and the first would have been Renji Ibarai. There is every chance that he could have been negatively impacted after seeing the man that he aspired to surpass defeated so effortlessly by a Sternritter. Renji might not have had the will to continue training and to become stronger. After all, if the person that you respect and admire to surpass is killed before your very eyes with such ease, even the strongest warrior would be doubtful of the extent of their own abilities. Renji may have felt that it was futile to resist and would have accepted the downfall of the Soul Society. Now, if he were to have let the death of his captain get to him, he may not have travelled to the Royal Palace to train, and he would not have learned of the the false Bankai that Zabimaru had given to him. Therefore, he probably wouldn't have achieved his true Bankai, and he wouldn't have been strong enough to fight and defeat Mask the Masculine when the time had come. On the other hand, this is a shonen story that we are talking about, so most likely Renji would have been positively impacted by Byakuya's death, and he would have trained with that much more determination in order to avenge the death of his captain. You had seen the passion with which Renji had tried to protect his captain, as he had felt the humiliation of Zenbon Sakura being used against its rightful owner. After all, Renji is not the type of character to take things lying down, and it's for this reason that I believe that Byakuya dying would have positively affected Renji, and it would have helped to push him beyond his limits in a very convincing manner. The next character who would have been impacted by the death of Byakuya is his adopted sister Rukia Kuchiki. Now we know that she had undertaken her own training with Ichibei at the royal palace, which had led to her acquiring a significant power boost, and it had even resulted in her acquiring her own Bankai. It was thanks to her newly awakened Bankai that she was able to defeat As Nodt, and in some way restore the honor of her brother who was brutally defeated by the Stenritter. Now this was a huge moment for Rukia's character, and I love that Kubo gave her the win here, despite the fact that Byakuya had to intervene when she was succumbing to fear after the Stenritter had activated his holy form midway during their battle. Now if Byakuya didn't intervene to help and reassure her, would she have the resolve to overcome the fear within her heart? If Byakuya did die, then he wouldn't have been able to help Rukia, and there is every chance that she would have succumbed to fear and died in the same way that her brother did. Contrastingly, the death of Byakuya would have been an excellent motivator for Rukia in order to push herself even further. Unlike Renji, she too would have channeled her emotions into avenging the death of her brother. Enduring and living through difficulty gives rise to strength. So Rukia would have avenged Byakuya by defeating As Nodt very swiftly, not even giving the Stenritter an opportunity to activate his holy form. Alternatively, Renji and Rukia could have worked together in order to put a stop to the Stenritter, and I believe that this would have been a fantastic way for the two of them to grow stronger and to avenge the death of such an iconic character who means so much to them. In general, the death of Byakuya would have had many implications for Rukia's character, aside from this responsibility of avenging his death, because after the war with the Quincy, she would have not only become the captain of the 13th Division, but she may have become the new head of the Kuchiki family. That being said, she is a Kuchiki in name only, and she does not bear the blood of the royal family. So would she have even been allowed to take up such an important position? Or would her lack of royal blood disqualify her? We know that Byakuya has no heir and his wife is dead. Now would that mean the end of the Kuchiki lineage? It is definitely something to think about. Now the last character who would have been impacted by Byakuya's death is Ichigo, our protagonist. As a former enemy turned comrade, Byakuya had grown to respect Ichigo over the course of the series. In addition to this, Ichigo had also come to respect him, as he never held any resentment towards Byakuya for going along with Rukia's execution, since he had learnt that he was only following the laws of the Soul Society because he could not be seen to be breaking them as one of the heads of a noble family. Ichigo played a massive role in positively impacting Byakuya's character, and this change had benefited Rukia and Renji, who were finally acknowledged by Byakuya. After he was defeated by Ichigo, he had seen his determination to help Rukia during the Soul Society arc, and this had in fact changed and altered his perspective. Rukia and Renji are Ichigo's friends within the Soul Society. The same way that they respect and admire Byakuya, I'd assume that Ichigo also feels the same way towards him. Now during the fake Karakura Town arc, Byakuya had stopped Ichigo from fighting Yami in chapter 380, and he had told him to return to the human world, reminding him of his duty to defend Karakura Town as its substitute Shinigami. It was Byakuya's words of encouragement that highlight the respect that these two characters have for each other. This is further emphasized later on in the story after Byakuya defeats Tsukishima in chapter 473. Byakuya states that he has no remorse for Tsukishima since he is an enemy of Ichigo. With the death of Byakuya, Ichigo too would have been motivated to become stronger in order to avenge his death. Now following all of this, the Bleach manga had concluded in August of 2016, but Kubo did in fact surprise all of us with a special one-shot chapter titled New Breeds from Hell, which was released in August of 2021. This chapter established that a captain level Shinigami has so much Reiatsu that a ritual must be performed 13 years after their death in order to send them to hell. This is due to the fact that they are so powerful, their Reiatsu is too dense to be reintegrated into the Soul Society. Now if Byakuya did die during the first invasion of the Quincy, his power would have also contributed to destabilizing the balance of Reishi, along with the deaths of Yamamoto, Unohana, and Ukitake. This destabilization had resulted in the gates of hell opening from the inside. Now it is not confirmed if we will see these characters again in a potential continuation, but Byakuya would have also been sent to hell considering everything that we learned from this one-shot chapter. later. Now, will Ichigo and the rest of the Gotei 13 have to face off against the former captains in a future story arc? If so, would the presence of Byakuya have turned the tide of battle one way or the other? Because imagine if Rukia or Renji had to battle Byakuya during this hell arc. How would they feel knowing someone so close to them has been sent to hell? An individual who had not only dedicated their life to protect the Soul Society, but to preserve its honor. Would Rukia and Renji have defected from the Soul Society in protest of this system that punishes a man for having done nothing wrong? Would Renji have felt responsible for Byakuya being sent to hell due to being unable to save him? Would this result in the Kuchiki noble family withdrawing support from the Soul Society if they had learnt that a former head was sent to hell? Or are the royal families aware of this fate that awaits all captains? Of course, there would have been a lot of possibilities open for speculation if Byakuya did die, but all of these avenues of questioning do exist for the characters of Unohana, Ukitake, and Yamamoto. This video idea of speculating whether if Byakuya should have died had come to me after watching the 5th episode of the 1000 Year Blood War arc anime. After learning that the anime had cut a line where Hashward had informed Yhwach that Byakuya had died. Now, by cutting this line, it is evident that the anime is not going to change the fate of Byakuya, and they are not even going to hint at the fact that he is close to death or he is going to die like the manga had done. Changing the fate of a character like Byakuya would have had such a huge impact on the 1000 Year Blood War arc. It would have effectively been a rewrite of sorts. So most likely I was expecting too much for them to have changed something like this. There are so many theories and areas of speculation when it comes to the fate of Byakuya, and I hope that you enjoyed this video where I explored some of the possibilities of what could have happened. Now we're at the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. Like me, did you think that Byakuya was going to die after he was defeated by As Nodt, or did this thought not even cross your mind? What do you feel about them cutting the line from Hashward where he states that Byakuya has died? I would love for all of you to continue the discussion in the comments and let me know, do you think that Byakuya should have died in the 1000 Year Blood War arc? Lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.